His name was Ötzi, named after the Ötztal Valley, the remote alpine region where he was found. He is the best preserved prehistoric human ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Otzi was approximately 45 years old when he died. 5'5", lean, muscular. He had brown eyes, dark hair, and approximately 8 tattoos, making him the oldest tattooed human ever found. He suffered from arthritis in his knees and hips. He was lactose intolerant. In other words, Otzi wasn't some primitive cave dweller. He was a sophisticated, complex human being, living in a world far more advanced than most people imagine. His equipment told us everything. A copper axe, rare and valuable, the kind only high-status individuals carried. A longbow made from yew wood, nearly 6 feet tall, unfinished. 14 arrows, only 2 of them ready to fire. A flint knife, a grass cloak, waterproof leather gear, and in his stomach, his last meal: red deer meat, einkorn wheat, wild roots and berries, eaten just 30 to 60 minutes before he took his final breath. He didn't know what was coming. Nobody ever does. For years after his discovery, scientists studied every inch of Otzi's body, his DNA, his gut bacteria, his bone density, his stomach contents, but the cause of death remained a mystery. There were no obvious wounds, no broken bones, no signs of a fall. Then in 2001, 10 years after his body was first found, a radiologist took one final X-ray, and there buried deep inside Otzi's left shoulder was an arrowhead, a flint arrowhead, lodged millimeters from his subclavian artery. The arrow had been fired from behind, at close range. The angle suggested the shooter was slightly below and behind Otzi, possibly crouching behind a rock, waiting. The arrow severed his subclavian artery. Otzi would have bled out within minutes. He never had a chance to fight back. Or did he? Look at his right hand. Between the thumb and index finger, a deep, clean cut. A defensive wound, the kind you get when you grab the blade of a knife with your bare hand. Otzi had been in a fight recently, and the blood on his weapons told an even darker story. On his knife, someone else's blood. On his arrowheads, 2 more blood sources. On his coat, a 4th individual. 4 different people's blood found on one man's weapons. Otzi didn't just die in the mountains. Otzi had been in a war. So who killed him? To answer that, we need to understand the world Otzi lived in 5,300 years ago. The Alps were not empty. Neolithic communities farmed these valleys. They traded, they built, they fought. Resources were scarce. Territory was everything. Violence was common. Otzi wasn't just a hiker. Based on his copper axe and equipment, researchers believe he was either a chieftain, a trader, or a warrior, possibly all 3, which means he had enemies. Theory 1. Ritual sacrifice. Some researchers pointed to one strange detail. His copper axe, the most valuable object he carried, was left with his body. A thief would have taken it immediately. So why was it still there? Unless the killing wasn't about robbery. Unless this was something more deliberate, more ceremonial. Theory 2. Ambush by rival clan. The blood on Otzi's weapons suggests he fought multiple people in the days before his death. He may have raided a rival settlement, killed their people, taken their resources, and they followed him all the way into the mountains, waiting for their moment. Theory 3. Betrayal. This is the most chilling possibility. The arrow was fired at close range. In open mountain terrain, you don't let an enemy get that close, not unless you trust them. The most likely scenario, according to several researchers, is that Otzi's killer was someone he knew, someone walking beside him, someone he never suspected. We will never know their name. We will never know their motive. But somewhere in those mountains, 5,300 years ago, someone made a decision. And Otzi never made it home. In 2012, scientists fully sequenced Otzi's entire genome. What they found rewrote history. Otzi had brown eyes, not the blue eyes researchers expected for a European of that era. He had a genetic predisposition for cardiovascular disease. He carried genes linked to Lyme disease, the earliest known case in human history. His ancestry traced back to early Anatolian farmers, people who had migrated into Europe thousands of years before him. And his Y chromosome haplogroup, the genetic marker passed from father to son, still exists today in isolated communities in Sardinia and the Austrian Alps. There are men alive right now carrying the same paternal DNA as a murder victim from 5,300 years ago. Think about that. Otzi had no idea he would be found, no idea that strangers thousands of years later would know what he ate for lunch, what diseases he carried, whose blood was on his knife. He was just a man walking through the mountains on the last day of his life. Otzi's killer was never caught. No trial, no confession, no justice. Just a body in the ice, perfectly preserved, waiting 53 centuries to finally tell his story. Today, Otzi rests at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy, behind a refrigerated glass window kept at exactly the same temperature as the glacier that preserved him. Millions of people have stood before him, looked at his face, and wondered, who did this to you? The world's oldest cold case, still unsolved, but somehow, thanks to science, one of the most understood. If you want to see the next case, a 9,000-year-old massacre, where an entire village was slaughtered in a single night, subscribe. Because prehistoric crime didn't end with Otzi. It was just getting started.